rendezvous, trade fights for better views. We both need something new. Maybe we should just tell her.
Hello, hive-minded readers, and welcome to the Books and the Bees podcast. Just like bees play a crucial role in pollinating flowers and sustaining life, books pollinate minds and nurture the soul. We see the connection between the two, the delicate dance of ideas and stories that enrich our lives.
I'm Hailey.
And I'm Cody.
Welcome to our podcast.
Hailey! What's up? We're out here.
We are out here. It's Wednesday again.
It's Wednesday. It's halfway through. Actually, it's like almost through July Wednesday. So it's not halfway through anymore.
Yeah. What? July flew by.
It did. Yeah, the summer is just zooming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's too fast. I can't handle it.
True.
Although I will say, like, fall is one of my more favorite seasons, so I'm looking forward to fall time. So
can't wait. I'm a big fall guy, big Halloween person. So my time is coming for sure. Sick of the heat. The heat's unbearable.
Yes.
But that's okay. We're trying.
I agree. We are actually finally out of the hundreds this week, and it feels so nice.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100-degree weather is just unbearable. There's no reason we should be in 100-degree weather.
It's miserable. And, like, we finally got to take the dogs outside. Like, you know, like, obviously we still take them outside to, like, go to the bathroom. But we got to, like, let them, like, play outside instead of, you know, like, quick in and out.
Yeah.
You know, but... Gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And where, you know, I'm not where I live currently. I'm actually in New York City right now. But where I live, there's a bunch of fires happening. And my wife texted me yesterday and said that there's like ash falling out of the sky. Because where I live, you know, we get a lot of fires. And then we also get the smoke that kind of just settles into the kind of the valley area that we live in. And it just turns into this crazy smoke inversion for like weeks out of the summer where you just never see the sun. It's constantly smoky outside. And then your AC brings it into your house. So your house smells like smoke. And it's just terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that feeling. Right now we also have a bunch of fires in Washington. Just all around Washington, to be quite honest. And it's socked in right now. I remember back in like high school, we'd have to cancel like games and events and training and stuff during like summer into fall time, like beginning of fall, like September-ish, because of how bad the smoke would get.
Yikes. Yeah.
It's just crazy.
And it is.
It's like, I feel like it's worse this year. Like there's been so many at least here, there's been so many like back-to-back fires lately, and it's like, jeez.
Yeah, it's definitely I feel like every year it gets hotter and smokier, and then that in turn makes it an even worse like winter almost, because either the winter is very mild and there's no snow and so you're in a drought the following year, or you end up with a shit ton of snow that just wreaks havoc on everything. And so it's like, what happened to the beautiful springtime where you had a month of very beautiful, nice weather, or fall where you had very beautiful, nice weather instead? Like last year, I think we had like up into the 90-degree weathers until like October, or 90-degree days until like October. It's like, why are we doing this? Like what's happening here?
Yeah, seriously, what the hell?
Yeah, we don't need that. We don't need that.
No, we do not.
No.
Man.
But you know what? We're trying.
We are. We're out here.
Yeah, every day. Every day we're out here. Ain't that the truth? Well, should we jump into what we're reading?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, Hailey, what are you reading?
I just finished a book. It was one of the ones that I bought on a random Target excursion. And it's called Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce the author's last name, so my apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. But it was such a good book, and it's a series, so I will be purchasing the other 3, I guess. So basically the book's about, it's following like the Four Horsemen kind of, I don't know if it's considered mythology, but like that kind of thing. And each book, as I'm sort of understanding it, is about each horseman. And the first one, as you can tell by the title, is Pestilence. And basically it's kind of like almost like apocalypse type vibes. I think you would really enjoy it. It's basically like modern day Four Horsemen show up, and spoilers, Four Horsemen show up, and the
Did you just spoil the ending of the Bible? Is that...
I guess, like, you know, Four Horsemen show up and you're screwed. I don't know.
Spoiler alert for the Holy Bible.
Yeah, spoiler alert if you've never heard of the Four Horsemen before. But they show up, and they basically like well, in the book they have like an equivalent to, what are those called? EMPs? The thing that like turns off all technology.
Yeah, like EMP would be like a mass projectile, or a CME would be like the sun doing it, right? I think.
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah. So essentially, that happens. All technology goes kaput, or most technology goes worldwide. And then 5 years goes by, and the first horseman shows up, and it's Pestilence. And Pestilence is out there, you know, doing his thing, and as Pestilence does. And so basically the main character, she draws the short stick and has to kill him. And I'm not going to spoil the rest of the book, because if I go any further, it's totally spoilers. But the whole vibe of the book is very like enemies to lovers. It's very, it's like apocalypse-ish type times. It honestly reminded me a lot of, and I don't know if maybe our listeners know about this, but like The Last of Us. Kind of that like end of days type society. And it's at first set in Canada, and then it kind of goes into like the Pacific Northwest as the book progresses. And yeah, just like some really, and it's got romance, it's got some like hot and heavy scenes, definitely like on the page romance. I don't know if this is the right term either, but like theology, it's kind of got like some like, why is God doing this to us type of themes, you know, because you're dealing with the Four Horsemen.
Sure. It's
very like biblical-esque. And yeah, it like kind of, there's some like human existence questioning, kind of like, are we our own demise type thoughts that happen throughout the book, which is really cool. And it almost read like I wasn't reading a romance. It almost read like I was reading more sci-fi type thing, but it was good. Very good. Very good book. Well written. I highly recommend it for sure.
Yeah. I think I would really like this book. It does sound right up my alley. Yeah. I love apocalypse books. I love, you know, kind of that sci-fi vibe, and this like, you know, retelling of theology / mythology is really, really cool. So yeah, this is definitely a book I'm going to put on my TBR for sure. Yeah, you would enjoy it, I think. Are all the books out yet, or is it still coming out? Do you know? I'm pretty sure that all of them are out, because when I was in Target, they had all of them. They had like Pestilence, War, Death, and whatever the other one is. Okay. Famine. Yeah. I actually don't know what any of the Four Horsemen are. I don't remember. I'll look it up real super quick. It's been a long time since I've studied the Bible, I guess. My husband's like really into the Four Horsemen and like that kind of
thing. I don't know what it's called, if it's considered mythology, theology, if it's like a offshoot. I have no idea what it's considered. But yeah, so and there's like a couple of shows that we watched where like those themes were kind of in it, and it was really good. But yeah, I definitely let me see if I can find the series. Okay, so Pestilence is book 1, War is book 2, Famine is book 3, and Death is book 4.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Cool. But, that sounds like a kick-ass series.
For sure. I think this author might be a new, like, good find, for sure.
Sweet. I love it.
Yeah. Yes, and they are all out.
Oh, good.
They were all published in 2023? No way. No way. I don't believe it.
I wonder if they were, like, republished.
Maybe. Well, yeah, because on Goodreads it says published August 15th of 2023. And it says that for all of them.
Oh, yeah. So they must have been, like, republished. Or maybe they were, like, fanfic or something and got published.
Yeah, the cover art's really cool for all of them, too. But I really liked Pestilence. Let me see if I can find...
Ooh, getting a live preview.
Like.
Oh, yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah.
It's like a crown with 2, are those arrowheads or arrows?
Yeah.
Through it? Yeah, really cool. I like it. And a little fire kind of emblem on the crown. It's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really good.
Sweet.
Yeah. Enough about my book. What are you getting into, Cody?
Well, I do have to mention, because I'm in New York City, I was trying so hard because I'm going to be here for 3 weeks. So I was trying not to bring as many physical books as possible because, I'm going to be buying a lot of physical books, so I didn't want to pack my suitcase. And I mentioned last week that I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, and I did not think I was going to be able to finish it before I left, but I did. That book was, I have to tell you, one of the best freaking books I've read this year. 100% going to be in my top 10.
Wow.
I loved everything about it. It's exactly what you think it is. It's about this kid who's 17 and he's in kind of a slasher situation of himself where he's almost like a victim of a slasher, which is a really cool, I won't spoil what the slasher motive is, but it's a very cool motive. And he ends up becoming kind of cursed in a way to be a slasher. And the whole book is basically him trying to fight the slasher in him, like the slasher curse that's affecting him. And so there's a lot of very cool like movie references, and the tropes that go with slasher movies are very, very highlighted in the book. And Stephen Graham Jones, I've mentioned it many times on the podcast. He's just such a good writer. I was captivated by the book, could not put it down. Ended up staying up until almost midnight to finish it the night I left, and I wasn't complaining because it was such a good ending. Great story. I highly recommend it. It's probably my favorite Stephen Graham Jones book, which is saying a lot because I've read quite a few of his work, and I really, really liked it. It was so good. Oh, it was so good. I'm so sad that it's over because, man, it was really good. Yeah. So, yeah, the Stephen Graham Jones book, it's really good. I love it. Highly recommend for fans of horror, fans of slasher movies. You're going to love this book. It's really good and definitely worth getting. The other book that I'm reading, and I'm about, I think, 80% of the way through it, is the last book in the Time I Got Drunk series, which I think has an actual name, but I just keep calling them that because that's what they all start with. And the third one is called That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human by Kimberly Lemming. It's just what you would expect with the other two. It's cozy fantasy, got a little bit of a story plot with it. I'm actually not going to talk about the story at all because it's definitely a spoiler for the first two books, so read those for sure before. But it does involve characters you know, and it's really good. It's not as spicy as the other two. The second one was incredibly spicy, which I think I mentioned on the podcast. This one's probably more it's probably like a 4, so it's respectable. But The last one was a crazy 5, maybe even like a 6 if we're able to bump up the rating a little bit. But this one's probably more like a 4. It's a little bit more of a build up for the romance, but the story's really funny. I'm very much interested in the plot, and there's a talking sword in the book. So you know what? How can you go wrong with a talking sword? Yeah. It's really good. I'm just loving it. It's a fun casual read, and I'll probably finish it tonight after we're done because I'm ready to see what happens.
Nice.
Yeah, as always, we got really good reads.
Books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, we're both out here reading really good books.
Yeah,
I love that for us.
I do too. Do you feel like you're out of your book slump now, or
yeah,
still kind of fighting through it?
Yeah, I think part of it was like the looming, because I had a deadline for one of the arcs that I had to do, and I think it was that was like looming over me, that I was like, I need to like get this book read and get it done. And I think that sometimes no shade to arcs, but like sometimes that it comes with a lot of pressure to not only read the book but then like put your thoughts together and then review the book in a way that's nice. And even if like you don't like the book, or even if you do like the book, I feel like trying to put a synopsis of the book and a review in a way that you think is gonna appease to the audience and appease to the author, and even sometimes like the publishing houses, like I feel like that stuff kind of really impacts reading and readability and just the overall like vibes of a book. It kind of takes the pleasure out of it a little bit to me. But man, yeah, that Pestilence book, yeah. Once I started like reading it, it was almost like I couldn't put it down. Like I stayed up one morning until like 3 a.m. trying to finish it. And then I was like,
crap. Dang.
Yeah, I was I was like, okay, I need to go to bed.
And here I am bragging about staying up till like midnight, and you're popping off at 3 a.m.
Well, yeah. So I try not to do it, but sometimes I like lose track. You know, like when you get so deep into a book, like you lose track of time, and then you look at your like phone or the clock or whatever, and then you're like, oh shit, like I should probably go to bed. But
that's true. It's very true. But those are the best books that you completely forget where you are and you just totally get immersed in it. Yeah, those are the best books for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Love it. Cool. I'm glad to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Should we jump into beekeeping?
Yeah.
Hailey, do you have any beekeeping?
I don't really have any beekeeping, honestly. I can't. Yeah. It's been one of those weeks. So
been a crazy week. I did want to mention, so like we have a couple ones that we've already mentioned before. We have a Goodreads group that you can find. It's in our show notes. I won't really say much more than that. And we are going to do a co-read still for August. It is an Education in Malice. My copy actually just came in yesterday from the library. So nice. Still haven't looked at it, but we will make sure to let you all know how we break it up. And I did want to mention too, and I didn't pull any books from the list, but last week we mentioned the New York Times top 100 of the century over the last 24 years. And they released a slightly different version of the list, which was all by readers. And I thought that list was much more representative of like the modern reading culture than the actual list. So I don't know if they published like an article through New York Times, but I do know that they put it on their Instagram. So if you are interested, please go to their Instagram and check it out, because this was a list that I was interested in. Like I looked at all these books, and I don't know how many of them I've read, but I definitely had read more than I did on the regular list, and really felt like, oh, these are books I would go read these books. Let me put these down. And I put a couple on my TBR while I was looking. So go check out that list.
Yeah. I think I glimpsed very quickly through the list, and there was already like way more. There's a few books that I was like, oh yeah, I've read that. Like, so. And
there was a bunch of different genres. I saw a few romances. I think there was a couple Emily Henrys that made it on there. Just a couple Stephen Kings that were on there. So yeah, it was a better list for sure.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So way to go, New York Times. That should have been the original article, and the other one should have been the Instagram post, because I was much more interested in that book or in that list.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And it's like, I don't know, I was kind of like, oh, that's so funny that we were like literally just talking about like what if a readers did, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I know I should have submitted one. I didn't submit one, and I should have. I am a part of a reading group that's associated with a book podcast that I listen to, and they did one, and I haven't seen the results of it yet, but I'm really interested to see how that one is too, because all the people that are kind of a part of this podcast, we're all very much genre readers, and there's a lot of horror readers, and so I'm expecting a lot of really good horror books to be on this list, so I'm excited to see it.
Nice.
So if anything, it's inspired a big conversation about, the top 100 books, which I guess is a good thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And maybe they'll either do more lists, or maybe they'll come out with a more representative one next year or whatever.
Hopefully soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only other beekeeping I have is that I am visiting as many bookstores as I can in New York. I've been to 5, I think, already, and they've all been really good in their own retrospect. I went to one that's the first day I came in. I went to it. It's called Book Culture, and I grabbed a book called The Lady's Handbook for Her Mysterious Illness, and it's a memoir by Sarah Raimi, and I hear it's really good. It was a staff pick, so I'm really excited to dive into that. I might even recommend it for a book club that I'm a part of. It's kind of into the realm that we're in. And then I found a horror book that I've been looking for forever called I found another book at a different bookstore, a horror book that I've been looking for a long time, and it's called Exquisite Corpse by now I'm looking to see the author, Poppy Z. Bright, and it's supposed to be a really good body horror book, and so I'm very much excited to read it because I've heard it's very, very intense, and I'm here for it. So it's been successful. Yeah, been fun. It's been
5
fun.
bookstores. That's cool.
Yeah, and we have quite a few more listed. My wife's going to come visit for a few days with me, and then we're going to travel up the coast a little bit to visit more books. We're going to try to go to the public library because I guess they have a bunch of exhibits of like really cool old books that they have in their catalog. I went to a 2-story Barnes & Noble yesterday, which was one of my goals in life, is to do that. It was a beautiful bookstore. They even had an author showing or an author like interview or whatever they call it yesterday that I was able to listen to. And apparently there's a 4-story Barnes & Noble in New York that we're going to try to go to when my wife gets here. So yeah, it's pretty fun. First time I've been in a city that is big enough to have like more than one Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, that's so cool. I didn't even know that a 4-story Barnes & Noble existed.
Yeah, it's something else for sure. Yeah. And so many good indie bookstores too. Like there's just so many cool bookstores in all the different neighborhoods that I won't have time to visit, unfortunately, but it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Man,
I love it.
I'm low-key jealous.
It's fun. And I have to say, you have a picture of ramen behind you, and I had a really good bowl of ramen yesterday because in Idaho, there's no ramen hardly anywhere. And so I got to get it when I can. And I had a really good bowl of ramen yesterday.
Oh, man. I bet it was so good, too.
I love ramen.
I'm so jealous.
So good. Yeah. So good. Well, cool. Well, that's our beekeeping. Not a lot, but that's okay. We got plenty of other things. Yeah. Well, today's episode is, I think, a really fun topic. It is all about books or series or authors or anything in the bookish world that is intimidating us and potentially keeping us from reading or, I don't know, absorbing that content in whatever direction you might want to call it. And I think it's impossible for any reader to not be intimidated by a certain class of books because there's so many different books out there. And I know that a lot of them, some of them have, kind of a reputation behind them of being complicated or they're taught in highbrow literature courses, and so the regular everyday reader doesn't think they're smart enough to read them. But that's not true. I think everybody who wants to try to read a book should try to do it, and so we should try to overcome our fear of intimidation. So we have a list of books / authors / series / whatever of things that intimidate us, and maybe we can talk about how we can overcome our fears of intimidation.
Yeah.
Hailey, do you want to start with one of yours?
Yeah, sounds good. So my first, it's a series, and it's a well-known series. It's a well-loved series. It's a huge series. As far as like following, as far as I know or understand, book size. Is Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings books, specifically. And it's not that they are necessarily like impossible to read, but like for me, I, and potentially maybe some of our listeners, I grew up on the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yep.
You know, like when they were coming out, and I still love rewatching them. That's probably one of my top 5 like movie series that I like will just go back and watch randomly. And I know little to nothing about the like series itself, the book series specifically, outside of what's portrayed in the movie. I don't know how accurate the movie is to the series. No idea. But I don't know, like it just feels so intimidating. I've heard that they're very wordy. I've heard that they're, you know, and the following's kind of a little, no offense to any Lord of the Ring people out there, but like y'all are scary, okay?
It's so true.
It's so true. The way that they talk about it online, it's very like we know what we're talking about and you don't sort of vibes, I guess. Like especially for people that have read the books and then watched the movies versus people who have just watched the movies, it seems. But that seems to be kind of like true for most literary following, that, you know, the books get made into movies. And I'm one of those people for a couple of books that I've read throughout my life where I was like, yeah, that movie sucked. But I don't know, because I've never read them. And I would love to read them one day, but the like time, energy, and just overall size of them just sounds a lot.
Yes. I can attest. I have read all the Lord of the Rings books. And I read The Hobbit as well. And actually, I was very intimidated. I was just like you. I love the movies so much. They are like my top 3 movies, honestly. And I rewatch them all the time. I rewatched them like maybe a month ago. And they're really good. And the first time they came out, I was, I don't know, like 6th grade, 7th grade, like middle school age, when maybe like the first movie came out, or like the second movie, somewhere in there. Old enough that I could go to the theater and watch it, because I watched all 3 of them in the theaters. And my dad was a big fan of them, and he's like, oh, you should read The Hobbit, because, you know, it's all new. It's not any part of the series. And so I went to my school library and I checked out The Hobbit, and I went to class, and my teacher was like, oh, you are not advanced enough to read this book. And I was so put down by it. I was like, what the hell? Like, there's no way. I read a lot of crazy books. And so I read it, and I was not, there were things that I didn't pick up on, of course, because, you know, it's definitely not like a book that kids probably should read, but I read it and I enjoyed it and I really liked it. It's still my favorite book of the series. But it is like, it's intimidating, and people are kind of mean about folks who haven't read the books but have watched the movies. And I like them both. I think the movies are really good. The books I also really like. I do tend to reread them every few years because they are very well written. But high fantasy is also in my wheelhouse. Like, I love high fantasy. And so for people who don't like to read high fantasy, there's no reason to read them, you know, unless it's something that you really want to do. And so we shouldn't be like dogging on people who just watch the movies and read the books. But that's definitely a big part of the fan base. Yeah, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Would you say that that the movies stay true to the book, or do they do the thing that they do in Hollywood and they veer off?
There's definitely differences, I would say. Mm-hmm. Like the story is obviously a lot more nuanced in the book, and you kind of get more information. But I would say the overarching like premise of the story is still there, and there are definitely parts that were cut out because they just don't kind of jive with the story. And I actually think the movie storyline is much more streamlined, maybe because I was exposed to it first, and the characters are just so alive in the movie. The actors were just so amazing in that trilogy. The Hobbit trilogy does kind of spar off a little bit more because they were trying to fill up more space with, turning one book into 3 movies. So that's a little bit different. But Lord of the Rings, I would say the movies are pretty good adaptations. And don't at me, other Lord of the Rings fans, because honestly, if you're going to bash my opinion, I don't really care. Because I think they are. I think they're pretty good representations of the books. Mm-hmm. And it's fair to be intimidated by J.R.R. Tolkien because he wrote the fucking dictionary. Like, literally. He wrote the Oxford Dictionary.
Really?
So, like...
Oh, dang.
He was a professor who, invented the dictionary, basically. So, like... That's intimidating.
Yeah, I didn't know that, which, okay, that makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, and I mean the language he made up is so intense. There are other books that have been published later on that I haven't read. I've only read the trilogy and The Hobbit. But the Silmarillion is a book that people are they treat it like their religion. And if you don't know the Silmarillion, you're basically an idiot to them. So yeah, there's a lot of intimidation around not just the original series, but the other stuff too.
Man, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it is. So yeah,
I can't. Yeah, I can't imagine going that hard for a book franchise. But more power to them, I guess.
Imagine if Twilight fans were Lord of the Rings fans,
Oh God, I think to a certain degree. I don't know. Listen, I was in peak Twilight fandom in high school when the movies were coming. I had read the books. And I made a point to go to the movies and the releases and all that other fun stuff. And there was quite the following of people that were obviously the books were better, the movies were trash. Let's just get that out of the way. But there was some people that were writing dossiers on how bad the movies were, and I was like, you guys, it's not that deep. They're movies. Chill out. Yeah. And we're all 13-year-olds. It was not healthy. Not healthy.
That's true. I don't really remember that. Yeah. I just remember the movie hype. I don't really remember the angst. I don't know if that's the right word, but the angst from the people who read the books because, I didn't read the books, so maybe I was just tuned out of that particular side of it. But yeah.
Yeah, there was a few people. In my high school, I think, was when that all came out, the later movies that were very opinionated about certain things. So,
man, let's just enjoy what we enjoy and not bash other people,
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. What's your first book, first author
thing? So I think the first one I'll talk about is, it's really more of a type of book than it is a specific book, but I do have an example that I want to talk about, and it's books that have complex parts in it. And what I mean by that is, and I'll give an example of a book that I was intimidated by that I did read, and I was super glad that I did. Are you familiar with House of Leaves? It's a horror book that came out. It's been a while. It's written by Mark Danielewski, I think is how you pronounce his name. And it's basically about this. It's kind of like a story within a story, where it's about this couple who move into this house with their kids, and it turns out the house is kind of haunted, and sort of distorted, where like the rooms of the house kind of move, and you never really can get a sense of how accurate the inside of the house is. And their kids end up getting lost inside of the house. And so they're trying to find them, and they end up getting lost. And so they start marking the walls and walking through all the different hallways of the house, and basically end up getting lost themselves. And they're writing their story as they do this. And the story then gets released and altered by other people who start making their own contributions to the story. And all of this is in this one book, right? So this is all one book that's kind of sharing this multiple perspectives about this house. And there are even sections of the book where, like, at the end of it, it tells you to go to this page, and you go to this page, and it's like one little square of text inside a wall of another text. And so you're kind of distorting your reading like you're in the house that the story is a part of. And it's a super crazy, wild story. And the book is like crazy intimidating. It's really big. There's also a bunch of appendices that are a part of it. And so it's just really like, there's just so much to it. It's like an experience to read this book. And it took me a really long time to read it, just because of how like complicated it looks and is. And I finally ended up getting a free copy from a little free library in my neighborhood. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to read this book. I don't care how long it takes me. And it took me like a couple of weeks, like really, to kind of just sit there and read that book. But it was really good. I loved it. I totally get the hype around it. It was super popular when it came out. They released a remastered version, you know, some years ago. And I really, really liked it. And there's a couple other books that are like that. One of them is one that I own, but I have still been too intimidated to read. And it's just called S. It's edited by J.J. Abrams, the director for a bunch of crazy ass movies. And it's written by Doug Dorst. And it's all based around this book called Ship of Theseus, I think it is, which is a fictional book that this guy wrote, Doug Dorst wrote. And inside of the book is the main plot of the story for that whole book. That looks like a classic book from like the 1940s. It's about this ship of some sort. I actually don't really know much about that part. But inside the book are margins written by characters who are going through the book to try to understand how complicated this book is. And the author of this book is kind of an enigma that nobody really knows about. And so there's margins of like a graduate student making notes, and then some other college student is adding to the notes. And so there's like 3 or 4 different stories inside of this one story. And then there's like inserts for the book. So there's like napkins that people have written on, and pamphlets and coasters and all this stuff. So it's just really like intimidating because there's a shit ton of stuff to read, and I don't really know how to start it. So I've never read it because I've been too intimidated by it.
Yeah. It almost sounds like an immersive reading experience. Like you go to the movies and you like have the, you know, seats that make the air, you know, when certain things happen. Yeah. That's almost or like a puzzle almost, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think those are really good descriptions. Yeah.
I've never heard of either of those books actually, but they sound really cool, and honestly cool to just potentially have like on your shelf. Like, what a cool, like, hey, I have this book that's like essentially its own puzzle, like, here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That would intimidate me though too. Like, especially as like a casual reader, I feel like that would be like kind of an undertaking almost. You know, to sit down, like you'd have to have like an allotted time in order to even like keep up with the storyline.
Yeah, and you know, I typically read before I'm going to bed. So like I'm not gonna open this book with all these inserts, and I'm not gonna sit there and read it to help me fall asleep, because I'm trying to fall asleep. Like there's no way I'm gonna fall asleep trying to go through all this stuff and analyze everything. And you know, like we all have day jobs, like, so it almost feels like another job doing a book like that. And so, yeah, they're definitely intimidating for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like your brain would, like, get to the point of, like, trying to discover new things, and it's, like, a an awakening of the brain instead of a like relaxing of the brain.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if anybody's read this book, I think it's just called S. That's what I keep seeing. I don't know if that's even right or not. If anybody's read it, please let me know, because it is sitting on my shelf waiting to be read. And I've cracked it open. I was going to show it to you, but I'm away from my house, so I can't pull it out and show it to you. But it is really cool. It's fun to look at. But just wait. Yeah. Like, I just haven't been able to muster up the courage to read it yet.
Yeah. How many pages is it? Do you know?
It's pretty beefy, honestly. And
yeah.
I looked it up on Reddit to like learn how people read it. And this one guy had a pretty compelling argument to read like the book itself, like the actual ship of Theseus without the margins. So read all that. Then you go back to the beginning and then you read all the margins, and there's like older like notes in the margins and newer version of the notes in the margins. So then he's like, go through and read the older versions that are this color, and then go back to the beginning again and read the newer versions that are this color. And I was like, bro, what are you talking about? You want me to read this book 4 times? Like, and how do I document this on my Goodreads page? Like, did I just read 4 books? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's crazy.
It's something else for sure. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
What is your next author / book that intimidates you?
Mine's kind of an author, but also kind of in line with like the type, I guess. Because I wouldn't consider it a genre. I'd consider it maybe like even just a subgenre, but like, kind of the OG romance books.
That's a good one.
But more specifically, like Jane Austen, like anything written by Jane Austen.
Yeah. Like,
I've heard so many good things about the author and like their works and all this other stuff, but like, I don't know what it is, but there's something every time I see when I used to live in Illinois, there was at the Barnes & Noble that I would go to, they had like a Jane Austen, like, not exhibit, but like a little thing that was just like all Jane Austen books, and they had like the special bound ones, and then like merch and other miscellaneous like doodads and mugs and that sort of thing. And I would walk by every time and be like, wow, what like beautiful books, what a beautiful little like setup. They always sound so interesting, but there's just something about like the classicalness of it that kind of like is off-putting to me. And I don't know if that's like true for some other people, as maybe just like that classical type genre or classical type books from different genres that tend to seem just really intimidating as, I've kind of said, casual readers. It's, you're like, it's almost like you're entering like a secret room that like you're supposed to have like a password or something, and then there's like already people in the room, like a club. That's what I was looking for. It's almost like you're entering a club. Yeah,
it's true. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings, like you were mentioning. Like there is like a cult following to it that I've definitely felt it too. Like I would love to read a Jane Austen, and I never have because of the same reason. Like it's a little bit intimidating because of just like the fan base that follows it.
Yeah, and like I don't know about you, but sometimes I think about books like that, and also like back to Lord of the Rings as well. They kind of fall into this thought process, but I'm almost like, what if I'm disappointed? Like, what if I read it and then I hate it?
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Because people, and myself kind of included, but people really don't like when you like have negative opinions, or if you have a opposing even opinion of certain books and certain quote unquote classics. And I feel like if you vary from the norm, people tend to lash out.
Yeah.
So
no, that's so true. And I think part of it too, and I'll just lump in here because one of my intimidating sections is like just classics kind of in general. And I think part of it has to do with the following of the books. And then I don't want to like lump readers into this category, but the kind of people who read classics and they look down on people who don't read classics. I really don't want to be that kind of person. And so I just kind of, avoid those because like, oh, I don't want to like run into a bookstore and be like, oh my gosh, you haven't read this one classic book that was published in 1910. It's like, I don't want to be that person. I want to be really excited about new books that come out and really crazy cult books that come out. Like, I don't want to be, I don't, I when I think of that, I think of like people in a coffee shop with like a MacBook and they're writing their screenplay and they're drinking this crazy coffee. And they're looking down on people who read anything that came out post the 20th century. And that's probably an unfair depiction on my part, but I don't want to be that person. So
Yeah. No, I also, that's so funny because I feel like that person totally exists because I've ran into that person and they're very like, very uppity, very posh, very like, you haven't read these books? Like, what do you mean? And sometimes, more often than not, they're like some sort of English major.
Oh, so true.
That's so true. Or ex-English, or a philosophy major. No offense to people who have majored in either of these. I respect the hell out of you. But yeah, it just feels like a space we're not allowed in, like some sort of exclusive club.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like these quote unquote classics that we talk about, like 90% of them are from old white dudes. And it's like, really, why don't we talk about the other like classic books that were not written by old white dudes? Because probably those types of people haven't read him. And they're like, oh, you haven't read Charles Dickens. It's like, well, you haven't read any Octavia Butler or, any other artist who's not, who's not white. So shove it up your own butt, buddy. Like, calm down.
Yeah. Have you read any Tessa Bailey or Alexa Barton books? No? Well, what the hell,
What's wrong with you?
How dare you, first of all?
No, it's very true. It's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I kind of lumped mine in with yours. So do you want to do another one?
Yeah. Oh, and I'm kind of going to skip over one of mine because it's essentially the same thing.
Okay.
It's the books that have some sort of large following. So I'm not going to feel like we've kind of already touched on that.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll do my last one, which is specifically a book. And it's a pretty raunchy book. I'll put it that way. Like, not in a bad way, but also kind of in a bad way. And it is Haunting Adeline. And now I feel like I should say what the author is, but now I'm like, should I? Because, but again, it kind of has a large following. Mm-hmm. It's one of those books where you either have read it and you love it, or you have read it and you're like, dear God, don't read this book. And it seems like there's no in between. There's no people that are like, well, I like some of the. It's either you hate it or you love it. Kind of more personal for me, it has some themes in it that are a little bit more triggering for me. And while I do still read books that have like the trigger warnings and stuff, this one just feels like, do you really want to read that? But from everyone that some of my friends that have read it, they loved it. And they're like, you would love this book. And I really want to read it because of the huge following that it does have too. Kind of a double-edged sword on that one. Yeah. But it's almost like a FOMO type situation where you're like, I want to talk about this book too. Because it was like all over like Bookstagram and Book Talk for so long. Mm-hmm. There are people that were like hating on the book, loving on the book, saying, like, I mean, it was the talk of the town. But it definitely has some very heavy, very dark themes within it. And it's a romance, so
yeah,
I don't know. It's one. I've never looked up how many pages it is. I don't know if it's a big book.
My wife has read it.
It's a series.
My wife read. I don't know if she read the whole series. She read the first one, and we have a copy of it. Mm-hmm. It's pretty thick. Like, it's probably in the 500 or so, maybe even 600 pages range. So it's not a small book by any means, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's massive for what I would casually read for a romance.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely bigger than like the most romances, I would say. Yeah, and I could be wrong about like the page numbers, but I think it's somewhere around 500 pages or so.
Yeah, I just looked it up and it's 583 pages. So that's large.
I was so close. I was like, I said 500,
Yeah.
600. I was right there. Woo. Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
That's a honker. I call that a honker for sure.
Yeah, that's a big book.
That's a big book. Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. Like, obviously I'm not as much of a romance reader as you are, but this book was all over the place. It was kind of like ACOTAR a lot. And I imagine ACOTAR is also intimidating for readers because it has such a huge following. And like, you can't get on Book Talk without somebody screaming at you about reading ACOTAR, and even Throne of Glass for that matter.
Yeah.
But it was all over the place. And I was like, man, am I really missing out on it? And my wife read it and she liked it. And she was like, I don't think you're going to like this book. And I said, okay, well, you know me pretty well, so I'm going to go ahead and take your advice, and I'm just not going to read it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, if a book has that kind of, that one trigger that you really just can't deal with, it's not fun to read that.
Yeah, I agree.
Fun to read that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And always, as we have said before, read books that you enjoy. Don't read books that you don't enjoy.
So true.
Yeah. And honestly, I guess we could, read the book, and then if we don't like it, like halfway through, just like don't finish it.
Yeah, totally. DNF it.
DNF that shit.
DNF that shit, yeah.
Yeah. What's your last one?
Yeah, I got one. I did want to mention there. I don't know why, but like, I bought East of Eden by John Steinbeck a long time ago, and I've never been able to read it. I have no idea why. It's, I guess, another one of those classic books that's like, I'm just too intimidated to read it. I keep hearing good things about it. Haven't been able to touch it. I'm so sorry, John Steinbeck, who's been dead for probably 150 years. But I hear it's so good, and it's just one of those classic examples that I just can't get myself to read. But another book that I'm actually really sad I haven't read it, and I really think this is one I should overcome to read because I think I'm going to like it a lot, is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. And the reason it intimidates me is because, I heard a lot about it. It's very popular. It was on the original New York Times Top 100 books. It is highly talked about. The whole series, it's called the Broken Earth series, I think, is highly famous in like the fantasy world, the modern fantasy world. Everyone loves this series. And I listened to maybe the first hour of it via audiobook once, like 3 or 4 years ago, and I was so confused about like the world and the characters, and I really wasn't following it, and I just got like super discouraged, and I stopped reading it because I just didn't know what was happening. I couldn't follow the story, and it made me feel kind of like dumb in a way, because it's like, man, why can I not follow the story? Like, everyone else is loving this book, and here I am trying to struggle with these character names and all this intricacies of the history of what's happened. And I think the reason it was such a big problem was because when it's an audiobook, for me, I tend to not listen to the story as well. And so I usually, for audiobooks, I do like nonfiction books where like you don't have to pay attention to every second of the book. Of course you want to get the themes, but like you're not going to remember every aspect of a nonfiction book because there's just so much information. So that's a good way. It's a good way for me to get nonfiction information, at least, or lighthearted, casual stories like a contemporary romance. I like to do via audiobook because those are super easy breezy to fall into, and there's usually 2 characters, maybe a few more at the most, and they're typically in a world that's Earth, so I don't have to remember the name of the world and all the complex stuff about it. And so I don't think this book was meant for me to read as an audiobook, and I should retry it again as a physical copy. But just because of that one experience with the audiobook, I haven't been able to touch it.
Yeah. Man. That sucks, though. Like, the audiobook. That is something, though, that I also find hard as well. That, audiobooks... For me and probably for a lot of people, it's harder to like remember, concentrate. It's harder to do that. So man, I think you should totally try to reread it.
I should. Maybe I will this year. Maybe
You
this
should.
will be the year I do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, I hear good things. I hear really good things.
Yeah. In the wise words of, what's his name? Shia LaBeouf. Just do it.
Is that from Shia LaBeouf or is that from Nike?
It's from Nike, but I'm specifically referencing the memification of Shia LaBeouf in that one video where he was screaming at people to just do it.
You're right. I forgot about that.
I
forgot
That was
all
the
about
best thing
that.
ever.
Just a little bit of a tangent. We saw Holes. My wife and I watched Holes again for the first time in a while. That movie holds up. It's still pretty damn good. I
So
like
good.
it. Yeah, it's a good flick.
So good. I like that movie is probably one of my top 10 movies for sure. It's so good.
It's good. And that's a
like,
book too. I've never read the book, but I watched the movie.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
I feel like there's lots of books out there that you watch the movie and you're like, oh shit, that was a book. And then you just like go about life never reading the book.
Yeah, that's true. And then, the other part of me too, and this is probably a little snobbish on my part, and I think we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I hate it when, they make a movie based off a book and then all of a sudden the book covers now have like the movie poster on the cover of it. I think it's so tacky. I mean, Lord of the Rings did this for so long. I was so like, they're just so ugly. The covers are terrible. I don't know why anybody does this. They're just not good.
Yeah, especially when like the previous covers were just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like just fine. And then they slapped that ugly ass movie poster. And then it like, I don't know about maybe our listeners, but for me, and I know I've mentioned this before, but if I look at a cover and it has a person depicted, like the characters in what they're supposed to look like, or what Hollywood thinks that they should look like, which is usually inaccurate, by the way, it like puts me off a little bit because then that's all I picture the entire time, and I almost like disregard like the detailed depiction of the characters by the author. It like goes out my head.
Yep, same.
So, and I'm so glad that I read Twilight before I watched the movies and they came out because that would have ruined everything.
Yeah, I did. I actually don't know if I watched all the movies, but I did watch at least 2 of them that I can think of. Mm-hmm. And I never read the books, so I've never tried.
Yeah, I've heard some interesting things about the books recently that people have kind of what's the word? Like gathered and been like, oh, this is actually the author's talking about this in like the real world. Which is strange to me that people take the time to do that sort of thing. But whatever, kudos to you. And shit, I forgot where I was going with that. Oh well, it's gone. It's gone. It's out of my brain.
Yeah.
Brain fog.
I totally get that.
But yeah.
It's kind of like magic because I think we really do, when we really like a book, we read it at the right time of our lives, and there's a lot of times where I've read books, and I don't know if I can think of an example off the top of my head, but there might be a book that I really loved 10, 15 years ago, and then I try to reread it today, and it's like, man, did I really like it this much? Because I kind of don't like it. Or there's like a book that I didn't like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I tried to try it again, and sure enough, I love it. In fact, I did that with Dracula. I read all of Dracula. I think I was in high school when I read it. Didn't really care for it. Thought it was kind of boring. Didn't really do much for me. And then I reread it last year, and I was like, man, this is really good. I really liked it. Like, the prose was really cool, and yeah, I just ended up really liking it. And now I list Dracula as, top book for me, for sure. So, yeah, it's just, when you pick up a book in your life, I think plays a big factor in how you like the book, and it's interesting to go back and look at them throughout the years.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why I don't reread books, is because like whatever I was feeling in the moment, whatever I was experiencing at the time is just how I interpreted that book, and if I hated it, I hated it. Yeah. I don't want to go back to a book that I hated, even as a teenager. Yeah. Because I read a shit ton of books as a teenager, and there was some that I was like, that was meh. And there was Sorry, my dog's currently screaming at me.
Oh, jeez.
Dobermans are the worst. He's not getting attention.
Oh.
And he does this thing where if I'm like on the phone with someone or talking to someone and he can't see them, he whines. And I'm like, can you not? Busy. But yeah, so all that to say, I don't reread books, but
yeah,
teach their own.
That's true. That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Great. Well, are there any other comments we want to make about books that intimidate us?
No. I guess maybe for our listeners, if you want to get out of your comfort zone and maybe there's some books that intimidate you, we could all make a goal to read a book that intimidates us this year.
Yeah. Maybe I was thinking about this. Maybe for like 2025, we should come up with a reading challenge of sorts. And maybe that could be one of the reading challenges for 2025 is a book that intimidates us.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
That'd be cool.
Now we just have to remember to do it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, like if you have a book that you're intimidated by, for one, you could tell us what that book is because we'd love to know. I know there's so many books out there. One category that we kind of talked about are, I think, like really popular books that are out at the time can also be intimidating. Like all the hype that's around them right when they come out, I think is definitely a possibility for being intimidated. So if you're out there and you're like, man, I really want to tell Cody and Hailey about this book that I'm intimidated by, we have an email. It's booksandbeespod@gmail.com. You can go on there, shoot us an email. I promise we're very nice. We will reach out with loving arms and we'll tell you it's okay to be intimidated by a book. And we'll be there to support you. We also have an Instagram that Hailey works really hard to manage and does a great job on, and it's at booksandthebeespod. So please go on there and like our stuff, interact with us there. Yes. We would love to talk with you. And our DMs are open. Leave us a
comment. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Leave us a comment. DM us. Like it. I don't care. Like, just whatever you're comfortable with. I would love to see.
Absolutely.
That on our page.
Yeah. We have a Goodreads too. It's you just go to Goodreads and type in Books and Bees podcast. You'll find us. We have our own page and we also have a group you can join. Love to build a community there. And that's also the links in the show notes as well. So feel free to go down and check those. And if you'd like to give us a review on your podcast listening app, we would appreciate it. It does go a long way in increasing our viewership or our listenership, I guess, because we're not a visual medium. But it does help. And we are always trying to get more listeners to grow the community and just make this a really cool community for book fans like us. So please give us a 5-star review and interact with us because we love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank you to The American Indie for the use of their song Rendezvous. It is the intro and outro to our podcast, and we both love the song, and we love The American Indie, and we thank them for this beautiful song that we get to use because it's great.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm nodding my head as Cody's saying that. You can't see it, but I'm nodding my head.
Okay. All right, Hailey, is there anything else before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this literary journey as much as we did. If you're buzzing with excitement, don't forget to subscribe, email us, and leave a high 5-worthy review on your podcast listening app. Until next time, happy reading, and may your shelves be filled with tales as enchanting as a blooming garden. Keep the buzz alive, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.